So we're doing basically chapter 7, which is monetary and fiscal policy. And then chapter 8 again is unemployment. Chapter 7 is monetary and fiscal policy. So what is monetary policy? Monetary policy is the attempt by the government or its central bank to manipulate monetary variables such as, like money supply. When you change money supply, which can result in the change of interest rates, right? And achieve your goals. What are your economic goals? We say macroeconomic goals are keeping inflation low or price stability. Number 2 is low unemployment. Can we copy this? Number 3 is high economic growth. And the fourth is balance of payment equilibrium. So through monetary policy, we try to achieve 4 macroeconomic goals, which is uh, lower inflation. So that's basically balance of payment equilibrium. Ultimately, exchange rate is not your end goal. Your goal is to have a balance of payment equilibrium. If you try to manage your exchange rate through, if that's your goal, your ultimate goal is your balance of payment should come into an equilibrium. That's why you want the exchange rate to be manipulated, right? So these are the 4 goals. And so our idea would be to understand how the 4 goals could be achieved, and then also see how the conflict could happen, and then what are the sort of limitations of that. So how do we change money supply? We know that, guys. We can change money supply through the first method is your reserve ratio. Are we going to move on? Any questions? So yeah, so we remember we said that there could be many ways you could sort of control money supply. One was your monetary based control, which was reserve ratio. If your reserve ratio go up, we know this money supply will go down, and vice versa. If your reserve ratio go down, money supply goes up. We link the reserve ratio with the lending because when the reserve ratio is going down, the bank lending is going up, causing the money supply to go up. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing. So when you change your reserve ratio, you change your money supply. Another way we talked about was basically your open markets operation, which is government buying, selling securities. This is just a recap. That's why I'm going faster. When the government is buying securities, uh, uh, then their money supply go up. Why? Because they take the government securities from us and they give us money in return. Similarly, when they are selling securities, they give us the securities and they take the money away from the economy, right? But we also looked at, guys, your deficit financing. If the deficit financing is happening from general public, remember, money supply is unchanged, but if the deficit financing is happening through the banking sector, money supply will go up, right? So that's another factor we need to consider. Then comes discount rate. We didn't discuss discount rate too often, but discount rate is basically is the interest rate or the central bank is charging um, other banks like commercial banks who need to borrow reserve needs. So, for example, if Standard Chartered suddenly has a need for liquidity, who do they go to? Central bank. And the central bank says, why, fine, I can give you 20 million rupees or 2 million rupees or whatever, 20 million rupees, but I'll charge you a rate of interest. That rate of interest is discount rate. If that rate of interest is like 5%, then Standard Chartered will charge its consumers definitely more than 5% because the 5% is what they get the money for. They should charge 7% or 8%. So discount rate is the lowest rate of interest available in the market. When the central bank increases this discount rate, clearly I will need to make sure that I never run into liquidity issues, which means I will not do too much lending. Because if I do too much lending, I could run into reserves issues and I may need to borrow very expensive if I'm a bank. Make sense? So from a bank perspective, in order to meet the reserve requirement, we sometimes go to central bank, and from time to time, unanticipated withdrawals leave banks with insufficient reserves. And when they go to the central bank, and if the discount rate is too high, this would mean that they will be paying a large penalty on the fact that they don't have they've done too much lending. The best way to avoid any of those issues would be to not lend that much. Higher, so in other words, higher the discount rate, goes up, we will see bank lending to go down. Why? Because banks will be not so keen to lend and run into issues of lower reserves. Got it? Make sense? So look at this, guys. When the discount rate is low relative to market interest rate, bank tends to hold fewer reserves, allowing them to deposit. So lower discount rate means, you know this, that it's really cheap to borrow money. Higher discount rate for a bank means expensive to borrow money. Got it? Then comes rules and regulations. Sometimes governments would say put a fine on a bank and or put financial penalties, basically making sure the lending does not happen. Let's say if I'm MCB, I was told to lend $5 million, but I lent let's say $7 million. This means I have broken my threshold. I could be fined for that, and that could. So most of it is linked to bank lending. You can see that the more bank lending happens, the more money supply goes up. The less bank lending happens, the less money supply will go up. So, and the lending can be controlled through reserve ratio, through discount rate, through rules and regulations, and so on. Got it? Does that make sense? Just a recap of the supply effect. Let's look at monetary policy at work. So, guys, when we increase money supply, right, we know interest rate goes down. This is what we call expansionary monetary policy. Remember, another name for this we saw in a MCQ was quantitative easing. So the government increases money supply, which results in interest rate to go down. And when the interest rate goes down, guys, few things happen. Number one, consumption will go up. Why? Because the cost of borrowing is going down. Number two, investment will go up. And number three, guys, we said this. Yeah, bonds, but bonds is kind of like, but what about the exchange rate? What happens to hot money? Yeah, so when the interest rate goes down, hot money flows out, leading to exchange rate to fall, and that would make exports to be cheaper, imports to be expensive, and therefore also X minus M to go up. And that in turn would mean AD will go up. But there's an important thing we need to understand, guys. If the AD goes up, right? Let's see this in terms of a diagram. If the AD goes up, what are the various goals am I achieving and what are the various goals I'm not achieving? If the AD goes up from 80 to 81, am I controlling my inflation? No. Price level goes up. No. Am I increasing my GDP? So yeah, GDP goes up. Unemployment, does it go down? Yes. So these two goals are achieved, but I might not be able to achieve my price level. So there's a conflict here because when the AD goes up, you may achieve your higher GDP, you may achieve your lower unemployment. Remember, because this is your real GDP. This is our real GDP and price level. But you may not be able to sort of, from what it looks like, may not be able to control inflation because this could result in inflation to rise. And what about X minus N, guys? Net exports. What will happen to net exports? Sorry? Export will do what happened to exports? Why? So first of all, if the price level goes up, one could argue this. One argument is if the price level goes up, exports become expensive, imports become cheaper, it could make your X minus M to go down. It could be possible. But if the X minus M goes down, you know, like AD should fall. But normally if the price level is going up in your economy, and imports are becoming cheaper, they could be. So we want to see what happens to sort of your um, country's balance of payment, because first thing first, the inflationary effect, is it going to make your AD curve shift backward, or is it going to make you uncompetitive, and so on is what we need to see. Another argument people a lot of time raise is that when you're making interest rate go down, people can also end up buying more of foreign goods because they have more money now. You are increasing money supply, interest rate is going down, consumption goes up. It could also go up for foreign goods. So we want to see this a little more in detail before we talk about that. But um, but clearly, if you want your GDP to go up, you make your interest rate go down. Okay, does that make sense? Let's talk about now an important discussion, because whenever you're talking about monetary policy, you want to talk about how effective is monetary policy in achieving the goals. Okay, so what are the limitations of monetary policy? The first problem of monetary policy is the demand for money. Guys, what if this happens? What if government increases money supply and this happens? What do we call this? We call this liquidity trap. If the money supply goes up and interest rates are already at the lowest level, then what will happen to this, guys? What's the implication of this? It will be, it will remain same. So when the money supply goes up, your interest rates will remain same, and as a result of this, the excess liquidity is not spent, which means economy run into what we call a recession. Make sense? So this is the first drawback of a monetary policy, that monetary policy may become ineffective at low interest rates. Let me write this. So first problem is that monetary policy may be ineffective at lower interest rates due to liquidity trap. But can you see one more thing, guys? If the money supply was here, MS dash, and then it goes up, then it's effective. Higher interest rates, you can see it's effective. If the money supply was going from MS dash to MS naught, that was fine because the interest rate did go down. And therefore, when the interest rate goes down, everything else will happen. But if the money supply is too high already and the interest rates are too low already, then the economy is running into what we call a liquidity trap. The government's effort to change interest rates will be ineffective. So first of all, let's read this, that the effectiveness of monetary policy is also dependent upon how elastic the demand for money is to change in interest rates. So according to the Keynesian, the demand for money is very elastic. If this is the case, then any rise in money supply will not change interest rate by that much. Okay, which means we run into a liquidity trap issue. Make sense? Any questions? The second thing, guys, is what we call demand for interest rates and investments. So I wanted to explain this idea that one of the arguments Keynesians raise. So number two is demand for investments or investment. Another argument that Keynesians raise about your monetary policy is this, that the demand for investment is kind of very inelastic. Why? Because they say this, that if you look at interest rates on my x-axis, y-axis, and my quantity of investment on my x-axis, if the interest rate goes up a significantly lot, you will see, or vice versa, if the interest rate goes down significantly, you will see demand for investment to rise by very little. And they argue this, that investment doesn't really depend on interest rate alone. If I'm a business person, what do you guys think it should depend on? Like if you want to sort of start a project or a factory or whatever, do you think you care about interest rate or something else? Economic growth, which means you want to look at economic conditions. Yeah. What else? You want to look at your demand, right? What if I start a school and there's no demand out there, for example, right? Or what if there's a low business confidence? These factors matter more than interest rate. When you look at demand for investment, it's very inelastic because interest rates matter, but not that much. Keynesians argue that when you look at it from a business perspective, for example, during COVID, even if the interest rate goes down, do you think more factories will start? And the answer is probably not, because the economic condition isn't strong enough. Got it? Does that make sense? So, according to the Keynesians, another argument they say this that investment is relatively unresponsive to change in interest rates. Business people are more likely to be affected by the state of their product rather than by interest rates. Hence, if you lower interest rates from a expansionary monetary policy, it will not see investment to go up significantly or consumption to go up significantly because people do care about interest rate, but not that much. What is more of a stronger indicator for why investment will go up will be your consumer and business confidence, your state of market, and so on. If it was elastic, then the slight changes in interest rate will have a larger effect of investment. People will care about it more. But according to Keynesians, people actually are not that responsive. They don't really care about interest rate as a key factor. It's an important factor, but not a key factor that can change investment. Make sense? So the first criticism was about demand for money being very flat or leading to liquidity trap. The second one is demand for investment is very inelastic. The third one, guys, is that time lags. If I lower interest rate, right, how long will it take to change my AD? And sometimes economists argue it may take much, much longer. If I reduce interest rate, suddenly you can't change my spending behavior. It will take me many, many months before I factor the fact in that the interest rate has gone down and I need to spend more. So economists argue that there is a time lag with the monetary policy. When interest rates fall, people do not really cut their savings quickly. It will take them some time. So they may take a long time for changes in interest rate to change AD. Why? Because people, like if I'm a borrower or if I'm a saver, right? If I'm a saver, then I won't really change my habits right away. You want your saver to become a spender, right? You want your saver to start spending more. You won't see that behavior to change very quickly. It will take some time, which means monetary policy is slow to change AD. If you run into a recession and you really want to fix the problem, probably it's going to take some time for monetary policy to become effective. Make sense? Do we get that? And by the way, time lag is a criticism for all kind of policies. Like it's always, except for probably some people argue about fiscal policy where you actually give money to people in people's hand. Like the stimulus package which the US government was giving, it actually said this, like they were actually giving hard cash to people. People would get the cash and they wanted people to spend that money, and they were giving it to the really poor people. They knew that these people will not save money, they will definitely spend that. That's a very quick enough sort of policy to change it. But here you change interest rate to change people's perspective about spending and saving, and then you will see AD to change. Got it? Are we good? Last one, guys, is mobility of financial capital. Now, I want to explain this idea. Like if you're a country like Japan or if you're a country like US, mobility of financial capital matters. What do we mean by this? So, financial capital moves quickly or slowly in developed countries? Quickly. Japan is linked with UK is linked with US, and all of these markets are linked pretty, and you lower interest rate. Why did you lower interest rate? Because you wanted to basically achieve um, higher economic growth. What if you lower interest rate, or rather, yeah, you lower interest rate, and that results in the hot money to flow out very quickly, and as a result of this, your exports become cheaper and imports become expensive, and that causes X minus M to go up. That's a good scenario because you lower interest rate and your X minus M went up. What if you try to increase interest rate, the problem would be increasing interest rate slightly above any other country, you will see the X minus M will actually go down. Sometimes what countries know this, that if they really want their trade position to not get affected, they do not want interest rate to change. Pakistan, on the other hand, is a different scenario. Pakistan can change interest rates and your trade position will not change that much because hot money doesn't really quickly flow in, flow out. Make sense? If, for example, UK interest rate is, let's say, 2% and US interest rate is like 2.5%, this half percent margin could be good enough for countries to have hot money flowing in, flowing out. But for developing countries, that flow doesn't really happen. So for developed countries, it's actually essential to keep interest rate very close to each other. Make sense? So in a world where there's a high mobility of financial capital, we argue this, that it can be difficult for a country to have an interest rate that is significantly different from other countries, which means is monetary policy in your hand? And the answer is no, because monetary policy can affect so many other variables that you are very careful to use it or exercise your policy tool. Got it? Slight change in interest rate can make your economy lose out so big in the trade position that you might not want to touch interest rate as a tool to change economies uh, goals. Got it? So a rise in interest rate, for example, can lead to hot money flow out, an exchange rate to appreciate, and a country's trade position to get affected. And that's why, with the ever increasing mobility of financial capital, monetary policy isn't really a tool for many developed countries to be used, because you can't afford to have a different interest rate than any other country. If you do that, your trade will get affected. Got it? Okay. So when you have a question, I want to show you a question as well. We have some time. When you have a question for Guys, let's look at this one. Uh, Lack of consumer spending causes recession. Recession do not improve a country's standard of living. It is always better, therefore, to encourage consumer spending, for this improves a country's standard of living. Okay, what is a recession, and is it always caused by lack of consumer spending? So first thing is, a recession is basically falling AD, right? Continuously falling AD. Does it always happen to consumer spending? And the answer is, consumer spending is roughly half of your country's GDP as seen by data. But there could be other factors. For example, recession could also happen because of lack of investment. It could happen because of net exports going down and so on and so forth, right? Uh, and you need to then talk about basically the how consumer spending is a factor, but how could there could be other factors. Remember, we talked about factors affecting consumption and factors affecting investment. So if you look at those factors affecting investment, we said that it could be many factors that can affect your consumer spending. The business confidence could be low, consumer confidence could be low. It could also be interest rates could be high, and so on and so forth. Then B part says this: discuss what policy the government might use to try and end the recession. In this, you can talk about fiscal and monetary policy, let's say to begin with, two policies. When we talk about monetary policies, you talk about monetary policy, but give some limitations of it as well. Got it? We'll talk about fiscal policy tomorrow, but when you talk about monetary policy, you can talk about monetary policy, how it works to make the AD go up, but then there's some limitations that you may need to be cognizant of. For example, liquidity trap can happen. For example, investment is not so responsive, according to Keynesians. For example, mobility of financial capital and so on. Make sense? Another question I wanted to look at. This one. Explain why rapid economic growth and high inflation might often occur at the same time. I'm going to talk about economic growth, but basically rapid growth means AD going up. AD going up, there could be inflation that can happen. Also, when the AD is going, demand is going up, what if cost of production also goes up because you're importing a lot more? So that could also result in inflation to happen. So talk about how inflation and rapid growth are linked to each other, basically rising AD. And discuss what policies might be used by government to control inflation. Again, you can use what we call contractionary monetary policy, where your interest rates can go up and money supply can go down. In fact, money supply can go down, causing interest rate to go up, and that in turn can make AD to fall, and you can control inflation through that. But we'll soon also learn about basically you can use demand side policies, which is basically fiscal and monetary policy. And we'll also do another chapter discussion called supply side policies. Okay, so we'll talk about this later. But in your answer, you can talk about demand side policies and supply side policies. We are right now doing monetary policy, which is a demand side policy, because that makes the AD change. A supply side policy we'll do later will change the AS. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Thank you guys. Have a good one.